This is Charter Local Edition. My name is Brad Pomerantz. We are joined by John Prose. He is a member of the Michigan State Senate and a huge supporter of STEM education and a program called FIRST Robotics. You got 3 kids yourself. I have 2 kids around the same age. Are your children into robotics yet?
Well, you know what? I wouldn't have thought that any one of my children would be interested in that necessarily. They're doing great in school. My wife and I are blessed with 3 kids that are really working hard and doing quite well.
Despite their father.
In spite of their father, that's right. I mean, someday I'm going to grow up and do something with my life.
Exactly.
So what's really interesting to me, though, is that this whole robotics movement, and it is a movement in the state of Michigan with thousands of kids that are participating, has grown to such an extent that they're extending the programs now in my region and in region across the state into the middle school level. And that's where my kids are today. I have an upcoming 8th grader and 7th grader.
Same.
And my son says, I'm in. I want to participate and I want to be a part of the middle school robotics program.
And what's nice about the program in which you are most passionate, called FIRST Robotics, is it's not just about making the robot. I had no idea that robotics is now going beyond that, looking at issues like marketing and communications and the whole process behind the product that is the robot.
Absolutely, which, if you think about it, is exactly what happens in businesses across Michigan today. So as we look in Southwest Michigan, that is a very heavy manufacturing, small tool and die shops that supply those big OEMs on the rest of the state. They work in project orientation. Project-based learning is the key to our success in the future. So FIRST Robotics institutes that particular ideal, the ideal of working cooperatively towards an end goal, an end game, working as a team together to make those sorts of things happen. And here's what's really interesting too, in the competitions themselves, they have to work with other teams by rule to succeed in their particular project. So it allows for girls and boys in their educational process to be on project-based teams outside of the classroom on all facets of a business product.
Talk about girls.
Yes.
You have daughters?
I do.
I have 2.
I have 2 also.
Yeah, and for better or for worse, girls may think that robotics is not for them. They may think that science and math is not for them. I'm begging my eldest to not think that. She loves science but not math. It's kind of an odd mix, but be that as it may. Talk to us about what FIRST Robotics is doing to bring our daughters into the conversation.
And this is part of the vision that Dean Kamen, the founder of FIRST Robotics, and he was also the guy that, I think it was the Segway.
Oh, really?
Was the inventor of the Segway. I think it was the heart replacement,
the
heart pump. I mean, it's amazing. So he's an amazing and talented individual who looked at this and said, you know what, we've got all this talent out there, but the talent is going in a different direction. How do we make sure that girls and boys are exposed? My wife's a perfect example. So she went to Marquette University. High skilled in the engineering side of things, with certain she was going to be an engineer. But she was the only woman in the first class that she went to.
And I wanted to ask you about that because we're probably around the same age, and I think it's fair to say that when we were in college, not a lot of girls majoring in engineering. Even now, not a lot of girls majoring, but probably more than when we were in college.
Certainly more today because of things like FIRST Robotics that gives that exposure. And it demystifies it not only for young women, but it demystifies it for those of us who are a little bit older than today's middle school and high school age, where we look at things a little bit differently today. They look at it completely differently. And so they are now exposed and participating in what many believe is only a male-dominated society. Well, look at engineers today and look at the job openings today. We need those smart girls as much as we need those smart boys. There will be over 700 engineering jobs that are available right now in Southwest Michigan, and about 250,000 are expected by 2020 in the Southwest Michigan region and the rest of the state.
I want to ask you about keeping those engineers, those chemists, those scientists in Michigan.
That's the key.
Because let's face it, Chicago, not far, very attractive.
Absolutely. Indianapolis is 3 hours away from my home.
Madison, Milwaukee, there's just a lot going on in this region. So what are you doing to take FIRST Robotics and its progeny to a place where it can keep people home?
The key right now with FIRST Robotics is that it's sponsored by the manufacturers in Southwest Michigan. So the teams themselves coordinate with engineers and communications and marketing folks who are participants on the team as advisors. So if you look at the robots themselves, they are badged with Whirlpool and Stryker and Eaton Corporation.
Product placement wherever it matters.
That's exactly right. And so set that aside from a marketing perspective. It literally is exposure of those kids to the manufacturers and the businesses themselves, and the businesses and the manufacturers themselves get to see the talent that's coming up and invest in that talent.
But are they following those high school robotic geniuses to MSU and Michigan and Stanford or wherever they may go? So when they come back home, when they're interviewing their junior and senior year, like, oh, I remember him.
Absolutely.
How do we make sure that we get him back home?
That's the key. And this is exactly why a Whirlpool Corporation, who does all of their engineering and all of their research and development in Benton Harbor, right there in my district, right? Their effort is to make sure that they identify these students so that they can reach back to them at a future point.
Are they doing that?
They need to keep talent.
Sir, are they really?
Absolutely.
I mean, they're tracking that well. We're that advanced that we're tracking, oh, this one went to Northwestern, and we're going to make sure that we know that even though he's in Chicago now or she's in Madison, we're going to get her back home.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And that talent skill gap, if we can decrease the amount of jobs that are available today because of that lack of talent that exists, and then ultimately keeping the talent in Michigan only helps our economy as a whole, helps everybody else who isn't in the STEM areas, science, technology, engineering, mathematics, mechatronics. Now it becomes an opportunity for economic development and growth for Michigan.
Let me ask you about a new acronym, which I'm sure you've heard, STEAM.
Of course.
And STEAM adds A for art.
You got it.
Now, in our era, 100 years ago in the last century, A would never be in that because art is something separate.
That's right.
But we now know art is intricately involved and can be in STEM because art is now on the computer in so many ways. So is FIRST Robotics and other entities like it working to get that A in STEM and STEAM?
I don't know that FIRST Robotics is directly working on the engineering or beyond the engineering side towards the, say, the design side or the marketability of design, but when you look at the corporations in Southwest Michigan who rely upon that artistic side of the equation for design purposes, I mean, it comes down to literally every square inch of a washing machine design that happens because of the graphic artists, that happens because of the way that they identify the touch screen that you use for your washing machine. All of those things matter, which is why a STEAM education brings a lot of those design engineers. Now, when you talk to the auto industry, the OEMs on the southeast side of the state, they're all about STEAM. Why is that the case? Because the design elements that go into our automobiles are critical to the function of their future sales. It's very important.
So recently, the Michigan State Legislature and Governor passed an education budget, which, at least in the House, the Democrats liked as well as the Republicans.
It was bipartisan in both the House and the Senate.
The Senate not, well, be that as it may. But the good news is more money for schools.
That's right.
Great news. But what about more money for STEM?
We specifically invested additional dollars to help to seed these programs and to offset some of the costs that these teams have in getting up and running. The key is to get them up and running with those businesses that surround that particular school district who is putting together that team so that they're participants in their own future success and the success of the team once it's getting out onto the competition circuit. Amazing that we've sent so many teams to St. Louis to the World Championships, our state championships. It is the most exciting, and it is NBA Finals on steroids.
I love that.
It honestly is. It's loud music, it's interactive, it's tweeting and live tweeting in the middle of these competitions. If you haven't been, you have to go.
In our final moments, if one of our viewers, some of our viewers, all of our viewers want to get their kids involved in FIRST Robotics, how can they?
You can just simply look up FIRST Robotics online.
It's that
You'll
simple.
see through Dean Kamen's site with FIRST Robotics. And FIRST is all over the state of Michigan. There's over 300 teams. We've got thousands of students and kids, and it's pushing into our middle school with even my son, Jack.
His name is John Prose. He is a member of the Michigan State Senate. My name is Brad Pomerantz. You are watching Charter Local Edition.